All right, guys. So today we are on episode 4. It's been quite a while since I've done a podcast, but we are back. The Invisible Jiu-Jitsu podcast was really designed for martial artists in particular, because there is a whole invisible world of processes that are taking place under the routine of a martial artist or someone that's pursuing martial arts. And I wanted to talk about those very things. And I thought this month was a really good month to actually bring back the podcast, because what we're doing at the school right now is an attendance competition. And what this implies is trying to give people motivation to build discipline within themselves, right? And it has to take place within a person first before it can actually exist outwardly. So I thought I'd make this podcast for you guys and maybe just give you a little bit of motivation to ask yourself, like, what's preventing you from actually performing to your full potential? And I think how I'm going to do this is just give you guys a few quotes from famous martial artists, particularly jiu-jitsu, maybe not jiu-jitsu, that actually talk about discipline. And maybe we can cover a few different dynamics of what discipline is, how it manifests or doesn't manifest in somebody's life. And hopefully by the end of this short podcast, you guys will maybe start to look at that invisible process, right? That inward process that actually allows us to gain discipline, right? So what I actually did was, ChatGPT can be very useful. I just asked ChatGPT to give me 10 quotes by martial artists about discipline. Now, the first one that comes to mind for me, because most people are very familiar with Jocko Willink. If you guys aren't familiar with Jocko Willink, he's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL officer, and he's actually an author. I forget the name of his book, but he's become quite an influential figure because he is a jiu-jitsu black belt. He talks about it a lot, but he has a lot of things dedicated towards mindset and self-improvement and things along those lines. But he has a quote that he's famous for where he says, "Discipline equals freedom." So I'd like to break that apart, but I'd also like to introduce you guys to maybe some other quotes that were said as well. For example, we all know who Bruce Lee is. If you don't know who Bruce Lee is, then I highly recommend that you go back to the 1980s and go ahead and watch some traditional kung fu flicks. They're super cool. But even watch some interviews with him, with his philosophy and whatnot. But he goes ahead and says, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." And I say this all the time when we're drilling techniques in class. I use this exact quote. Why? Because our mind tends to wander, right? We do a technique a few times, and then your brain starts to say things like, "Oh, you get it," or "Oh, this is getting boring," or it starts to give you reasons why after the 10th kick you don't have to do another 9,990 more kicks, right? There's also another quote by the famous swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, who actually wrote the book of Five Rings. If you guys aren't familiar with Miyamoto Musashi, this was around like the feudal Japan era. He was somebody that was known for his record in duels and his understanding of fighting. But particularly, he was one of the first people to really pick up two swords at once, a longer and shorter sword. But eventually, after a certain period of time, he wound up escaping into caves and writing down his life experience. And he goes ahead to say, the true science of martial arts means practicing them in such a way that they will be useful at any time, and to teach them in such a way that they will be useful in all things. I think this is one of my favorite ones, right? Because I grew up on the mats. I started training when I was 4 or 5 years old. I really fell in love with those traditional kung fu flicks. But what really inspired me was these guys were talking in a way that no one around me was talking in that way. And I was just like, I could feel the depth of the philosophy that a lot of these martial artists were saying. And I could feel it inside of me that there's something here that I don't quite understand, but I want to understand. That feeling has never left me since I really started watching those movies. So I wound up getting into a lot of Eastern philosophy and finding out where these guys are actually getting this all from. But by, like Miyamoto is saying, by practicing them in such a way, by practicing martial arts in such a way that whether you're on the mats or off the mats or at work or doing the dishes or having a conversation with your wife, you should be able to apply the lessons learned from martial arts to all things. And then me as an instructor, right, he says you got to teach them in such a way that they will be useful to all things. And I think one of the things that motivates me most as an instructor is not just like creating, killers, like where, oh, my students are dominant over everybody. Like I'm the best. Like it's not really like, that's not the pursuit for me. I see my goal as a martial arts instructor exactly what Miyamoto is saying. I want to teach in a way where people's lives get improved, and not because of me, but because of how they're learning or how you guys are learning in the classroom. You can use it no matter where you are. So I really, really enjoyed this quote. Another super popular, probably the most popular when you think of influences on jiu-jitsu is Helio Gracie, right? Some may say he is the inventor of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to go into that whole debate because there are tons of records of finding jiu-jitsu related techniques all over the planet. We can go back to like I guess that you would call the Romans wrestling, right? And applying small joint locks and things like that. It's existed everywhere for a very long time. So I wouldn't necessarily say he created it, but he certainly pioneered grappling arts, right? And he says discipline is not something we do once in a while. It's something we have to do all the time. And that goes hand in hand with Miyamoto's Musashi, right? In terms of saying it's got to be useful in all things, right? It's not something you just do when you're on the mat, right? Who else can we take a look at here? Let's see, more jiu-jitsu related guys. Renzo Gracie, for example, right? Martial arts is not about learning to fight. It's about learning to discipline yourself, okay? We can go a little bit deeper into, that a little bit more. Let's see who else. Jet Li, right? Another guy practicing martial arts at a very young age, got swept into Hollywood. And who knows what that does to somebody. But, a lot of the things he says still resonate in terms of being a martial artist. And he says in martial arts, the biggest enemy is your own mind. Overcoming your inner battles is the ultimate discipline. And that goes hand in hand with, I'm trying to remember the guy who pioneered Aikido. I'm forgetting his name. Why am I forgetting his name? Let's find out. Just give me a sec here. So, oh, right, Mory Heusiba. And he is known for the quote, true victory is victory over oneself. I actually have it tattooed on myself. But this is the ultimate battle that we are all facing, right? That's the invisible side, is this inward process of building discipline, right? So let's go ahead and go back to that first quote by Jocko Willink. Discipline equals freedom. Well, if we take a look at what Jet Li is saying here, right, and we take a look at Jocko's quote, freedom from what? Freedom from what? Well, Jet Li is explaining it here. Freedom from your inner battles, right? Now, these inner battle, the term battle implies resistance. So, for example, I'm trying to lose weight, right? You walk by the table, there's a plate of cookies, right? And in your mind, immediately consciousness starts feeding you certain things like, oh, one isn't going to be a problem, right? You give attention to that thought, you feed it your energy with that attention, and pretty soon you find yourself having a cookie, right? And then all of a sudden those parasites inside of you, that fungal infection inside of you starts. By the way, guys, when you get hungry for a sweet treat at night, it's not because you're hungry for a sweet treat. It's because parasites are actually nocturnal. So that's why we get this craving for fuel for those very parasites when nighttime comes around. But the point is, you have one, and then one turns to three, and three turns to five, and five turns to, you eat the whole plate of cookies, and all of a sudden consciousness says, see, look how weak you are, right? You step on the scale, and then you have thoughts of regret about eating those cookies, right? So we see that rather than having the discipline or the ability to control the investment of our attention on certain thoughts, the thoughts that are useful to us, our mind is able to pull us or blow us like a leaf in the wind in certain directions that are not beneficial to us, right? So this inner process of just ignoring the cookie, the investment of attention not on the cookie, but on your goals, right? The goal has to be greater than these intrusive thoughts that try and pull you away from your goal, right? And we can talk about patterns, meaning there are certain patterns within your psychology or a certain framework within your mind that are reoccurring constantly. Whether you learned as a kid to manage your stress by eating, or whether, you become angry when someone talks in a certain way or has certain belief systems, these are programs that we, like a computer, run by sometimes our entire life without ever actually reflecting why we act the way that we act, right? So going back to Jet Li and Jocko Willink's quote of discipline equaling freedom and overcoming these inner battles, in the essence of it all, that's really what it is that we're dealing with. But we don't ever get taught that as a kid, right? No one ever tells us, like, look inside at this process that's happening inside of you and study it, right? Study it. And that's essentially that's my goal for you guys this month, right? Listen, guys, we all are very busy, right? Our modern day society is set up in such a way so that people don't have time to reflect. Because when you have time to reflect and you start to grow bigger values of importance, family, friends, empathy, compassion, love, and understanding. And that doesn't make people money, right? So because our society is based around this materialism, which is quite ironic, right? Because we're doing this giveaway for some, winter clothes or whatever, something to keep you guys warm. And the first thing that I tell you is like, hey, listen, let's not make it about this. But I wanted to show that through discipline, you can gain material benefits. But this isn't where our investment of attention should be. It should be on the internal benefits, right? But because that same consumerist attitude is to flaunt your, big happy family with the white picket fence, to flaunt your nice car to all of your neighbors, to flaunt your nice house or your Instagram profile or whatever it may be. It's all external things, right? But not to say that any of those things are bad, but it does take a certain amount of discipline and investment of attention to, afford a nice white picket PVC fence. Those things are expensive, right? So you have to dedicate your time and your attention to work and exchanging your time for money, which is energy, and using that to accumulate something material, right? Now, what if we took that same investment of attention and we put it towards our inner life, right? This is the fastest pathway to building genuine discipline for things that are not of the external, right? That are not of the visible. That's why the podcast is called Invisible Jiu-Jitsu, right? Because there's a lot to be learned from this entire process of being a martial artist. And unless you have someone that has this approach in their own life, you don't tend to come by it. Sometimes you may live your entire life and never come by it. So let's think, guys. It's time to go to class, right? Maybe you come. Today is Tuesday, right? And there's a 6 p.m. fundamentals class, okay? And that's the one you want to attend. It's the one you normally attend, let's say, right? And all of a sudden your kids say, hey, Dad, I want to go to Johnny's house, right? And then your daughter is like, hey, Dad, I have a school project tomorrow and I have to go to Michael's and get art supplies, right? I need this. It's due tomorrow. And then you say, well, why didn't you tell me? And you start to get frustrated because now that time that was used for yourself now has to be put elsewhere when you planned on, you had a plan, right? And consciousness said, this is the plan tonight. This is what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you got thrown monkey wrenches and it creates some animosity in you, some frustration. Oh, now I can't go to class this week now. Thanks, guys, right? You start having a little bit of resentment. But the fact of the matter is, we have a lot of classes, right? We have a lot of classes. And it may take an investment of your attention, right? Even though you may not want to give it, to maneuver things somewhere else in your week, right? Maybe it's a short conversation with your wife. Hey, listen, I really wanted, I had a plan to go to class tonight. The kids kind of threw me for a loop. So-and-so had to get this. I had to take Johnny to or I had to take, our son to Johnny's house. Or would you mind backing me up on Thursday so that I can go? Is that okay with you? Right? It's it's a simple conversation, but it takes effort, right? And it takes patience, and it takes, it takes more than what you may want to give in order to get to class. But that is the whole point. That is where the discipline lies. Because whenever you have to swim upstream, when everyone is swimming downstream, you have all the reasons in the world to turn around and go the other way. It's more comfortable. Everyone else is doing it, right? My body will be, more rested. But that's not where our progress lies. It always lies in these acts that make us uncomfortable. Why does it make us uncomfortable? Because it goes against the patterns that we're used to, right? So we have this ability to recognize these patterns, see which ones are useful to us, right? For example, I have the discipline to wake up every day and go to work because I have to support my family. That's that's a great pattern, right? But if, say, instead you feel sorry for yourself about having to go to work to support your family, so you go to the bar at night and you drink yourself to sleep, and then you wake up late and you wind up getting fired from your job, and probably not the greatest pattern, right? Like, that doesn't sound like it's something that's useful to you or the people around you, right? So how do we get familiar with these patterns? Simple. It's a simple process that you will not want to do. And it is just taking a journal. As these thoughts come in, you write them down, okay? Or you pull out your phone and you create a voice memo, right? This is what I'm thinking at this time, right? These are the events happening. These are the thoughts consciousness fed me. And this is how I am interpreting it at this moment, right? What you will find is that these patterns actually, because they're patterns, they're reoccurring. And it doesn't matter the scenario, right? The need, let's say, to write off the responsibility on another person, right, may happen when it's time to do the dishes. No, you do the dishes. Oh, I'm going to let it soak so my wife can see it and she'll finish it, right? I'm speaking from my own experience here, right? The whole let it soak thing is very funny to me, but it's a pattern that I have, right? So you have to recognize it, write it down, and you'll find that maybe it's not only with the dishes, right? But you say, for example, you go to throw something out and you miss the garbage pail and it's on the floor. And then you go ahead, consciousness says, well, someone else will throw it out. You're again handing over the responsibility to somebody else, right? Or if I am, teaching, right? And I rely on somebody's partner to make a correction of somebody that's doing something wrong, right? Well, that's not their job. Even though that is good, that I think that's a good quality of being a good partner. I can't rely on somebody and say, oh, well, so-and-so will handle it because they're working with that person. No, I have to walk over, right? I have to walk over. I have to give my time and attention and fix the technique for the person. So it can manifest in many different ways, these patterns. But when you keep a journal, you see the patterns more clearly rather than being wrapped up in your head, right? So now the pattern is, I get home from work, I lay on the couch, I'm watching Netflix. Oh, I'm so relaxed right now. I had such a long day. I don't want to get up, right? Daylight savings, they just made it dark out at 4:00. Like, I'll just go tomorrow, right? But the thing is you can go tonight, right? And consciousness feeds you all of these thoughts about why you don't have to. And then you know what else it'll do? It'll make you regret not going. So where is your investment of attention really, right? On regret, on, listening to things that aren't beneficial to you, right? Your investment of attention is on some Netflix drama instead of bettering yourself. And I'm not saying, guys, that there isn't time for rest, right? I'm simply saying we have to train our ability to invest our attention on where we want it, not on what our mind feeds us. So here we can observe that there is an inner process going on. There are the thoughts that are happening, and then there are the observer of the thoughts, right? And it almost seems like they're two different things, right? Now, this may sound woo-woo to some people that haven't gone through this process themselves. But if you do it, it's very factual. But it's not something I can prove to you. It's something that I could just tell you how to do it, and you have to be the one to do that sort of thing. So why don't we go ahead and take a look? Why don't we go ahead and go back to that quote from Jocko Willink of discipline equaling freedom. That's what the freedom is from, guys. It's freedom from the wind that blows you like a leaf left and right, which is your consciousness, which is the thoughts that you have. But it's the observer, right? That watches these thoughts, that invests the attention in these thoughts, that gives energy to the thought process and thus creates the action that follows, right? This is that inner process. And this is exactly what Miyamoto Musashi was saying, right? The science of martial arts, right? This is a science here, guys. It can be proven by an individual by following this process, right? The science of martial arts means practicing them in such a way that will be useful at any time, okay? So when we do fundamentals class and we're drilling a technique 1,000 times over, right? What do you want to do? You want to you want to practice it in a way that makes you work. And in your head, you may be saying, I have this technique. Oh, I'm getting tired, or right. Like, do those thoughts serve you? And do you invest your attention in it? You say, oh, I'm getting tired. I don't really feel like it. My ankle kind of hurts. You give attention to the thought, and all of a sudden you're drilling slower and slower and slower, and pretty soon you start a conversation with your partner and you're both sitting on the mats looking around while everyone is drilling. I've seen it 1,000 times, guys. I've seen it 1,000 times. It's what happens. I've personally done it. I know it happens. So we see that process right there, right? Are you performing to the best of your ability? And as they say, as you do one thing, you do all things. So if your time to show up is that 1 hour time slot on a Tuesday, right? Watch this process of the resistance before you walk out the door. Watch this process of the resistance of maybe doing the move less than you should, right? Or this process to not get your heart rate up to a certain extent because you're tired from work, right? Like this inner process and overcoming it through the observer and giving your attention to things that serve you is the freedom you're looking for. It's the freedom that you're looking for. And that's what discipline actually is. And instead, that very thing that we're looking for inwardly, we try and fill that gap with the things that we can see, right? The fence, the car, the house, the status at your job, our, drive to be in a certain positional hierarchy so that we have control over other people. These are all external things that we do to try and fill this void that actually can only be filled through this freedom that we're talking about here, right? The freedom to make the choices that bring you a fulfilling martial arts career or life in general. And that's why it needs to be useful in all things. And martial arts is a great way to do this. So I hope throughout this month, guys, you really start to observe this process. Okay, that is actually my goal of this entire competition, right? So do me a favor. Forget about the sweatpants. Forget about the hoodie and try and take this as an opportunity. Whether you're new to introspection and viewing the invisible, or you've heard of these concepts before and you do it every once in a while, or you're disciplined and you're constantly doing these things. Use this month as a way to really hone in on it. And, Thanksgiving comes around and, I'm not going to get into the origins of certain holidays and whatnot, but you can't ever go wrong with being thankful, right? And when you're thankful, you're willing to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, right? But what happens? Consciousness gets in the way. It tells you, don't be thankful for all the work. Be thankful for tell yourself how tired you are, right? Or, oh man, I have no time. I can't do anything, right? But you know what? You have a job that actually pays well, right? And you should be thankful for that. Where's the investment of your attention? Is it on being grateful for actually having work, right? Sometimes it takes, the Stoics have a strategy of reminding themselves of the things that could be, right? Or like something like reflecting on their own inevitable death allows them the freedom to appreciate life every day, right? Or in every moment, because you never know. We never know when our time is up. So discipline also combined with gratitude for the things that we already have is a surefire way to light the spark within you and live a more gratifying life, or a more fulfilling life, I should say, right? You guys have the opportunity. You have a healthy body. You're able to afford martial arts lessons. There are some people that can't get off the couch. There are some people that can't afford martial arts lessons. And instead, they watch UFC every day of their life, wishing and wishing and wishing, right? But that's not you. You have opportunity. So instead of investing your attention on, I don't have this and I don't have that, and I'm too old, I can't do jujitsu, bullshit, right? Instead, it's, I can, right? I'm young enough to do this. And, I've seen grandpas do jujitsu. It is for everyone when it's trained in the appropriate way. So hopefully, as this holiday comes up and things get a little chaotic, take a look around you, right? Do some of that introspection. When it's time to sit down after all the chaos of creating your holiday meal and inviting your family, and when you sit down, close your eyes and just take a deep breath and look around you, right? Look around you. But regardless of the political talk at the dinner table and the people with opposing views, and right, like, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that things could be so much worse, right? And you have people that are loving and caring surrounding you, and just tell yourself that you're grateful, even if you don't feel it. Just train your mind to think in a more positive way, right? And you'll find your actions that follow will be nothing but beneficial to you as a martial artist, as a person, right? So I didn't plan on coming across that Miyamoto Musashi quote. I planned on just going in on Jocko's quote, but I actually like his so much more because it's so much more applicable to everyday life. So let's use November to be grateful, to build discipline, to gain the skill of introspection. Make your journal. It takes discipline, though, right? You can write it in the notes in your phone, guys, right? You're like, oh, well, I'm not going to carry a notebook. All right, you carry your phone all day. Write it in your phone, okay? Put a timestamp. Put what your consciousness tells you, your thoughts, right? And then do it again and again and again, all throughout the day, okay? Especially when you're having some form of inner battle, maybe a decision that you can't make. Write down the thoughts that are coming to your head, and you will recognize the patterns that exist, okay? So that's it for today, guys. I thank you for your time and your attention, and I really look forward to training hard and seeing you guys in class and breaking over those limits that hold us back. And obviously, if we're all doing that and we're all striving for the same goal, the community becomes stronger. The vibe, the energy in the room becomes stronger. And when that happens, our training gets better because we're all looking for the same goal, right? To get better at jiu-jitsu, to become more disciplined, to become a better person, whatever it is for you. I want to be a competitor. I want to, whatever your goal is, it's nothing but good things when we learn to discipline ourselves. So much love to you guys. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And maybe I'll do one once a month. I kind of fell off for a long time. I haven't done this in a maybe almost even a year. But I did 3 previous ones back to back that you guys might want to take a look at. But maybe we pick a new topic each month, and I'll send this out as like a private link to you guys, so only you guys can see it. And if you guys ever come across something in these podcasts that you want to talk about or you want clarification on, you see me every day at the school. So hit me up after class and, we'll shoot the shit. And, it's something that I love to do. So much love to you guys. Thanks so much. You guys enjoy your day, and I'll see you on the mats.